Chairman, members, welcome to this meeting of the Dingwall and Seaforth Committee. Let's see it stop raining for the moment. So can we move on? Apologies for absence since all four of us are here. Declaration of interest. Are there any declaration?
I'll just give a transparency. My husband does work for one of the organisations, but the medial role within the Inverness and Cromarty Firth Freeport area, but he doesn't have any say on anything.
In terms of the recess power against item 3, the committee is asked to note that the recess power granted by the Council meeting on 27th June 2024 did not require to be exercised in relation to our business. Moving on to agenda item 4, glad to see that we've got Callum Firth this morning from Inverness, Cromarty, Firth, Freeport, and Callum's here to give us an update and take any questions. Good morning, Callum.
Good morning. Good morning, all. I think the thunder and lighting this morning might not be helping either.
We haven't had much of that, just a quick 10 minutes worth.
Yeah, I'll be bored. You're in another valley, so.
So thanks again, Callum, and welcome. Apologies for any delay. So I'll just hand over to you to give us your presentation. Thank
you very much, and thanks for the opportunity just to update you. And what I thought I would do, I do have some slides, but I thought what I might do is just give you an update on where we are, but really leave it more as a conversation, and so there's plenty of time for you to ask questions and just to see where things are at. So we're in terms of where we're in the cycle, you'll be aware, I'm very grateful to the members for supporting back in early June the submission of our full business case, which is kind of the last step in the wall, if you like, and that's with Scottish and UK governments. When I last checked, there were 62 different departments or disciplines poring over it in detail. So which slightly scares me about the amount of feedback we might get, but nevertheless, I understand that despite the general election, they were pressing on with that, which was I was reassured to hear, because we've obviously we need to make progress. So, for example, I think the Welsh Freeports kind of got caught out with the timing of the general election. They weren't able to progress in the way they wanted to, but nevertheless, we'll hear back from that shortly. So, which is positive, because we need to obviously we already, to be clear, we already have our status, our tax status put in statute, so we're not holding back. We're cracking on and trying to bring as much business here as we can already. There'll be, at the end of that process, there'll be once it's been if you like, the actual technical case, if you like, has been completed to the satisfaction of the UK and Scottish governments. We'll go through a memorandum of understanding with obviously the council as an accountable body, the Scottish government, UK government, and then the Freeport board as well. So that all four parties will just reiterate what's has been put down in the full business case, and we can progress. That's, as you all know, that's been 4 years in the making. So it's gosh, it's not something. It's not a straightforward process, but as I say, nevertheless, we're cracking on and making progress with what needs to be done. We'll also, and although we've got our capital, although we've got our tax sites already affirmed, it's only once that full business case has been approved that we can start to draw down the 25 million of seed funding that we've attracted to the area. So it is a really important step nonetheless. We've as per the full business case, we've also, I'm pleased to say, our board is going to be strengthened a little bit, and not least of all, I'm pleased to say we have a female board member now, which is, I have to say, long overdue. So we have Vicky Nairn, who is the principal of UHI, is on the board, and there was always somebody representing UHI on the board. It was previously Roger Sendall, but now we have Vicky there. And of course, with the change in personnel at Port of Cromarty Firth, Bob Buskey used to be on the board, but it's now Alex, the new chief executive there. So the main things that we're doing just now, I suppose, whilst we're in this waiting period for the full business case to be put on the line, is pressing on with two things, I suppose you could summarise it. One is working with the local workforce development initiatives, making sure that as many people as possible and the local supply chain are in a position to be able to take some of these jobs and start to flow. And the jobs are starting to flow in the area as a whole. Really pleased to see investments in places like Inverness, that likes of we have Langfields and others who've invested in the area, and CRC Evans and River Gordon who are increasing the amount of apprenticeships. So the job count is climbing already, but we need to make sure that particularly the young folk in the area who might be thinking about leaving, and we're very conscious the exam results all landed last week, that it's very much in our consciousness about what their options are. So you'll be aware that we've had earlier in the year we had a big student fair, a job fair with about 600 students from across the area, including Dingwall Academy and Inverness and Tane and everywhere else in between. And there's lots of apprenticeships coming up now, vocational apprenticeships and traineeships and things. So we're making sure we get a good response to that. And I'm pleased to say that the guys at CRC Evans were telling us that they had a really strong response to their apprenticeship round that they had. So we're working closely with Highland Council's education teams. And there's always been good communication around the science, technology, engineering and math subjects, but we really are trying to get home working through with everybody that people don't have to leave the region unless they really want to. So the jobs are here. The second thing that we're doing as an overall headline is encouraging people to come into the area and invest. So we continue to have a significant amount of inward investment inquiries from the rest of the UK, the rest of Scotland, but also really importantly from abroad. So a lot from Asia and the USA and across Europe. So it used to be historically that the Cromarty Firth area didn't really feature very high up in priority in terms of inward investment for example, for Department of Business Trade and Scottish Development International. But now that because of the emergence of the offshore wind industry and what's happening with the green Freeport, I'm pleased to say that we're being, if not every week, every second week, we have delegations from across the world coming to look at potentially what's happening here over the next little while. And I'm extremely hopeful that we're going to have some significant job creation over the next few years. I should say to the members, and this is the balance that I'm always trying to strike, and hopefully I'm making the right balance, but I'll take your counsel on that as well. These are not all coming tomorrow, these jobs. The investment isn't all coming tomorrow. There are some that have already come, but it's about preparing the area, and there will be a big change for the area from what we've seen in the last 20 years. By the same token, we have to start, we have to just manage expectations a little bit. So in terms of timing, I do believe that the investment in jobs will come, but they won't all be here in the next few weeks. So for example, the Sumitomo factory up at Nig there, it's going to take at least 2 years before that actually starts trading. So, this will be a gradual growth over the next few years, but nevertheless, there's no time to lose in preparing the area for what comes next. So if at all possible, what I'd be really grateful from the members in this today is just to get your perception of how things are going, any advice you have, any areas you think we should focus on. But also, I should say that in terms of communications, one of the things I've heard a few times is just about how we communicate to the communities and things that this is happening as well. We've already done one community newsletter. There's another one coming out soon that we put to all the community councils, and we'll make sure that you get a copy at the same time as that's released as well. I've got meetings lined up with, for example, the University of the Third Age, U3A. I don't know if any of you are involved in that. They've got a chapter that's based in Dingwall and Seaforth. So it's mainly retired people, retired professionals who still want to stay in touch with what's happening in the area. So I usually get a good grilling when I attend those meetings, but it's really positive because very often they're the ones who go on and influence their children or grandchildren or neighbours and friends to say, listen, there's something worth looking at. So I continue to engage with schools, community groups where necessary, and of course the ports themselves continue to engage directly with the immediate communities in that area. So for example, I was on a call Port of Nig with the community councils in that immediate surrounding area a few weeks ago. So it's kind of a whistle-stop tour of where we are, but really wanted to make sure, because I know you've got many items in your agenda, we're running a bit late, so I thought open it up really to any questions that you have, any advice you have, or any observations.
Thanks, Callum. I'll open it up to other members before I come in.
Yeah, I'll come in.
Margaret?
Yep, thank you very much. Thank you for that. It's really interesting. The one question that people keep come up to me and says, and was at the sale room the other day, and two people came and said, what is the council doing about housing? Because it's really urgent about housing in the whole of the Highland Council area. And I said, what do you mean? Well, I was watching the film the other night, the wee film on BBC Alpa, and that was the big problem, was housing. There was no place for people to live. And it took quite a while, because I was involved in it all, to manage to get enough housing. But it's really not the council's big responsibility, yes, for the people that live here, but for the people that are going to come in to work there, it's partial. But what are you doing, you know, in the Freeport to help with the situation?
Well, absolutely. It's probably one of the 2 or 3 big issues really around, you know, the region that could potentially be a real challenge on this. Probably the first is grid connection or First Equal, and then probably housing is probably right up there as one of the top 2 or 3 issues. One of the things that Councillor Patterson, that I'm always very careful to say as well, is that, you know, this is the big issue here is not just housing for workers coming in, it's housing for the workforce in general, because of course a huge proportion of the people that will be working in these new jobs coming will be locals. You know, the majority will be locals. But we want them to have the option to stay. For example, my sister was a nurse in the area, and one of the reasons she left the area is because she couldn't get her own house. And you know, so we really need to do it not just for the incoming workforce, but also to retain people in the area as well. So listen, from the word go, we've been meeting with all the housing association providers, the private house builders and developers, and I've been pretty vocal publicly about the need to accelerate housing in the area. And I'm really pleased that the council recently supported that whole sort of notion that there really is a housing crisis, and we're needing thousands and thousands of houses, and we're needing them sooner. We've obviously, one of the things we pushed with the Scottish Government, and obviously working hand in hand with the Highland Council, was developing sort of protocol for the area around how we assist development at the Freeport as a whole, but also housing has to come and be part of that. And I cast my mind back, and you're quite right to say it's not the sole responsibility of the council. This is going to have to be effort from a lot of people. I often talk to people about the fact I used to live in Strathpeffer when I was younger, and as many of you'll know, a lot of the housing at the back end of Strathpeffer was hydro housing. And you know, in the same way that we did in the past with forestry housing and with hydro housing, with police housing, I think we have to recognise, and certainly the big investors come to the area have to recognise that we all have to put our shoulder to the wheel here and try and help deliver housing from the area. So you're quite right to say it's not just the job of the council. I think that when we look at some of the big inward investments and the companies coming in, we have to say, how can they help with accommodation as well? Now, the bit that I suppose we look to the council for and help with is around consenting those areas and progressing them. So, because as you'll know, it's not a straightforward thing to get housing anywhere anymore. So how do we, I suppose it's a question for all of us, we need to work to help accelerate the availability of or progressive housing. There's likely to be temporary housing in the region. As you probably know, there's already talk about creating key worker temporary accommodation in the area, certainly for things like the transmission lines. But we're obviously, and I know that the council are as well, speaking about leaving a long legacy for that. So how do we leave serviced sites at the end of that temporary accommodation? How do we make sure that we can do as much as we can to make it available? So it is a challenge, but it's a challenge I think that everybody's aware of. In my view, we shouldn't distinguish between Freeport worker housing and housing for the area, because there's about 9,000 odd people on housing lists in the area already, and we can't have a situation where people are jumping a queue. So we just need to make sure it's just accommodation for the workforce for the area, the majority of whom are going to be from the area but want to stay here. So so we're working closely with the council, we're working closely with the Scottish Government in terms of housing. Last thing I'll say, members, is that you'll be aware that one of the mechanisms and one of the reasons why we all fought so hard for this was that the non-domestic rates that apply to the new factories and new areas within the Freeport, they get a holiday for 5 years non-domestic rates, but that's not lost to the area. That's been refunded back to Highland Council and to the Freeport area to help with capacity in the area. And it will obviously be subject to my board and the agreement of the council as well. But I think housing will be one of the main focuses for that fund going forward. If not necessarily building houses, making sites ready for housing and that kind of thing, helping the social landlords and things to progress that. So sorry, it's a long answer, but it's a big problem and one we have to work on together.
Thanks, Callum.
Thank you.
Anything
Hello, Callum. One of the comments you make is in the report is by Social Scotland pledge, and that you signed up to it, which I think is a really good thing. And the first one on it is recognise fair working principles, and you talked about the 5 years of not paying rates and reinvesting that. But I think there was criteria for that too, like a fair wage. Was that part of it too, and that had to be part of the new projects going forward. The other is on the engagement with local communities. You've talked in your presentation that RGC are speaking to communities and RGC are NIG speaking to communities in NIG, but this will have a big impact on many communities. I know, for instance, Killarney Community Council, which is based in Tor and covers that kind of area, and that will be impacted greatly by whatever happens, because everything, we've got the A9 going through the middle of it, and some of the areas round about, including our own areas here in Dingwall and Seaforth, they can see, especially when NIG first was built, all the housing and other infrastructure that was built at that time. So they feel they've got a say in what happens as well. And I wonder how that is going to be taken forward, because there's a difference between engaging with communities and community councils and consulting and like production and co-meetings. So especially with the local place-based planning that's gone on in the Black Island and elsewhere throughout the Highlands, what input will representatives from the community have to give their views on some of this, apart from just through the community council? Has that been looked at yet, or is that something further down the road?
Well, maybe just on the first one first, the fair work, just to say that so when the tax sites were, and just to be clear, the tax sites are very specific areas, so they're available online. The 520 hectares of tax sites, all the landowners, there's 10 landowners, including Highland Council and others as well, or rather the Common Good Fund, I should say. When anybody signed up, anybody wanted included in that, they had to sign up, and I'm pleased to say we've got it in a legally binding tax site delivery agreement of a Fair Work Charter. And that Fair Work Charter is around the Beauty House principles, so it's around non-use of 0 hours contracts, it's around the real living wage, all those kind of things. So we have got that work charter in place, and anybody coming into the Freeport and wanting some of those tax benefits, and bear in mind the non-domestic rate thing, that the council's got a strong hand in that as well. So if somebody were to come in and start, paying abnormally low wages, not adhering to the rules, and also our environmental charter, and we've got something we can apply to that, which is the tax site delivery agreement that was signed in with them before they got their tax status. So that Fair Work Charter is hard baked into it, and we've already pushed back once or twice on one or two little things that are happening. So we're keeping a close eye as things grow there. In relation to the community engagement side of it, one of the things I should say is that the Green Freeport itself is me and 2 other people, and hopefully soon to be 4 or 5. But and of course the Highland Council and others are partners in that. one of the things I certainly am, and I will do, is engage more broadly with the community and have. So, for example, we had a online seminar a while ago, and we had the council's deputy convener on that as well, myself and others. I think we had 180 odd folk participating online that way. So we can be involved, but also I suppose I'm looking for your guidance as well. You know, if for example there's a get together of, say, I know that sometimes you have community councils will have joint meetings, something like that. Very happy to come along and speak to any time. The challenge for me is there's so many community councils across the area. Getting to every one of them would be almost impossible. But very happy to come and speak to any group like that at any point. And I am trying to get out more and more and trying to communicate with them. The local based business, the local place plans you referred to, well, actually, you know, our intention, and I've been involved in some of their development as well, is to use them as a foundation for what we do, so that we're kind of aligned to what the local place plans are trying to do. So that if a community had a particular preference for something, you know, we'll work on the basis that that's something we could help support going forward. So yeah, it's a longer journey. Is Angela McLean, is that right? I'm just getting the names right. But very happy to come and speak, especially if there's a grouping of community councils. But overall, we'll just have to keep the conversation going with communities, and especially when it comes to things like environmental projects and things, we're going to throw it wide to the community to see what their priorities are as well.
Can I just come back and say that your webinars were very good, and the people could watch them when they wanted to, not just, you know, at the time you're having it. Yeah.
Well, we'll do more of them for sure.
All right, on you go, yeah.
Thanks, Callum. Callum, people in this area will remember the impact of the big development on the area. And I find increasingly people are coming and saying, well, what will it mean for us? Now, what I'm about to embark upon here, it may be too early for it, but these issues need to be in there. And so I'm going to be unashamedly parochial for a wee bit, because when you said that jobs are not coming in the next few weeks, then I'm breathing a sigh of relief, because in my view, Dingwall's not ready for this, and Dingwall and Seaforth is not ready for this. And I hear a lot about what's going to happen in Almas and Tane and Invergordon. I hear precious little about what people see as the impact it's going to have on Dingwall. So I just wanted to raise a couple of issues that are important and pertinent to us in the town. And that is, well, first of all, you mentioned yourself the non-domestic rates. Well, if a firm decided they wanted to locate in Dingwall, we've got a real issue with that, because they're not allowed to go into our local business park because of perceived flooding issues, which we've been trying to address for 3.5 years. And that needs to be looked at, because we want to attract the business here. We've got one of the biggest schools, well, actually the biggest primary school and almost the biggest secondary school in the town here. How do we make sure that our youngsters are ready and able to take advantage of any opportunities that come their way? In terms of our local hospital, because if we're going to have people coming into the area, there are doubts, there always seem to be doubts hanging over the North Memorial, and recently the number of beds has been reduced. I'm conscious that in Invergordon, I think they have something like 20 beds in Invergordon. That's not going to, between them, it's not going to be a big enough service to satisfy the needs of the people. And as you know, we all know Rigmore's to the Queen's enemy. There's also an issue surrounding, in my view, local transport. It's not easy to get from here, well, to anywhere really. And the bus service, certainly to places like Invergordon, Tane, just don't exist. So, as I say, I'm looking into the future, but I'm very keen that Dingwall and Seaforth isn't left behind in all of this, and I suspect we might be, and I hope you'll be able to reassure me that we're not. We also have an embargo on new house building in parts of the town because of the flooding issues that we've been trying to get sorted through. Basically through Scottish Government for some time, but that seems to have got lost in the long grass as well. And I'm nearly there. In terms of, you mentioned the £25 million seed funding. What's the intention, what is that to be used for? So I realise I'm a wee bit premature, but I don't want these issues to be lost going forward.
No, just so listen. The overall sentiment there around making sure areas like Dingwall and Seaforth are included. What I would say is, first of all, in terms of the schools thing, I mean, the schools and primary schools in that area are absolutely. I mean, listen, the workforce is going to come from everywhere, in my view, from Liverpool to Fort William to Forres and Wick and everywhere in between. In some ways, Dingwall area and Seaforth is very well placed to make sure, because they could benefit from jobs that are being created both in Inverness and Ardeshir, as well as what's happening up the eastern side of the Cromarty, sorry, the East Ross area. So we've absolutely been engaging with the schools as much in Dingwall as anywhere in terms of, so for example, all the kids in Dingwall that were coming to any of these events, we're looking at events all around the patch, and the kids in Dingwall, both particularly third and fourth years, have been involved in a lot. The one thing I would say is quite a lot of people have been saying to us, maybe we should be speaking to the first and second years, bearing in mind that they're going to be the ones that are maturing just as some of these things come into place. So that's absolutely, but we need every single school pupil in the area to be aware of the opportunities that are coming forward. On things like on the non-domestic rate side of it, so there's obviously, I've had representation from a lot of areas saying, well, we're not in that non-domestic rate area, so we might lose out. I guess what I would say, and I'll give you the same answer I've said to a few folk, is that the non-domestic is 520 hectares in the whole of our area, so it's quite specific areas, and they're mainly on the ports and places like Highland, Deep Haven. So they're quite targeted areas that were largely brownfield sites. And if you take places like Ardeshir or Highland, Deep Haven, these places that have sat empty for a long time, the amount of business that's coming, it's going to benefit the whole area. Well, the one thing I would say is that I only wish that some of the facilities, the vacant facilities that were in Dingwall were fabrication or manufacturing related and not office related, because there's a huge shortage of light manufacturing and industrial type space coming forward. Maybe for office space, less so, because obviously the area we're looking into is very much focused around, building and manufacturing and that kind of element. But certainly what we're seeing across the patch is interest in other facilities going up. So for example, there's very little manufacturing and office space available in places like Inverness, and obviously in and around Gordon it's getting used. So that will undoubtedly spread, I'm sure, to Dingwall's area. As I say, I just wish that you're making lots more manufacturing lockups, because that's what's going like hot cakes at the moment. In terms of the local transport and local infrastructure, listen, one of the things that we've said, and we said it in our full business case, is that again, working with the council, we need transport, and we need things like active transport and all these things to be really strong in the area, and that's everywhere from Dornoch right through Easterboard, right through Dingwall and Seaforth, and right across the whole area, because the workforce already moves around the area. I worked in Dingwall for a few years and lived in Beaulieu, and people move around, so we need to make sure transport allows that. And I agree with you that transport is probably one of the main things that we want to keep the workforce local and being utilised properly. People need to be able to move around more easily, and that's a big part. So part of the thing I think we should put the non-domestic rate fund to is try to get the transport links improved in the area, because if we can do that, we've got thousands of people in the area who are not employed, and it's not because they don't want to work, it's just because it's not that easy for them to get around, or they can't get the childcare support they need, that kind of thing. So things like transport and childcare are up there. Again, we have got time to fix it, but be absolutely assured, Councillor Mackenzie, if we want to get the local workforce going here, we'll need these elements to be in place. And that's why the conversations are starting already, and we're trying to look at how we improve that. And it comes on to my last point, you asked about the seed funding. So that's a process that started, believe it or not, 2 years ago. We've identified, working with the council again, a number of projects in that, and they had to be ones that are enhancing the infrastructure of the area to help with the readiness to do offshore, to do big marine engineering. So that list, that shortlist has already sort of been through now for about a year and a half through the council, through the Scottish Government and UK Government's list. But the priorities of that could change. But at the moment, if you like, I think there's 8 or 9 projects have been identified that are mainly around improving the capacity of the area to cope with heavy engineering, mainly quayside type stuff. So there's a few projects there. Again, that list is, I can share that list with you. It's been shared with councillors already in terms of the full business case. So as somebody who was christened Dingwall, I can only assure you, and someone who's visits I should declare an interest. I am a Ross County fan, but that's not really that relevant to this conversation. So I do spend a good part of the weekends there, but actually Dingwall's going to be the heart of what's happening, because it's got one of the biggest schools in the area. It's got a very strong legacy with what's happening in the area. So if we don't take a community like Dingwall along with us in this journey, we'll have lost a huge opportunity to capitalise in it, including all the businesses in the area. So we absolutely will be doing that going forward.
Delighted to hear it. I have to say I do have a Ross County tie on this morning.
Oh, right, okay.
Just one bit you didn't mention was engagement with the NHS in terms of capacity.
Yeah, no, I've got one of the things I've asked for a meeting with, and I'll be honest with you, it's not in the diary yet, but it will be in the next few weeks. Is a meeting with the NHS, the police, the fire brigade, and all the sort of key services in the area, because as you know, they have a continual negotiation around their budget and things as well. And one of the things that I don't necessarily think was being taken into full consideration at a Scottish Government level was that, with the work that's happening in the ports, with the work that's happening in the pump storage hydro schemes in the area, with the work that's happening on the transmission just now, this is one of the biggest infrastructure projects in Scotland's history. And the local services are gearing up to not just having local population, but especially during the construction phase, an increased number of people here. So I want to make sure that the local emergency services, including NHS, are aware that they're going to need to be matching that capacity for the region as it grows as well. So I totally take your point around the Memorial Hospital and in Regordon as well, because these small sites are always fighting. One thing I think that's changed a little bit was following COVID is that I think having one big super site for a whole region is now seen as a bit of a question on resilience. If Raigmore has got a significant infection issue, then it's a challenge. If we've got 2 or 3 hospitals in the region, it starts to give a bit more resilience, especially bear in mind that Dingwall and Invergordon will be in close proximity to where a lot of the actual work is happening on the site. So I am meeting with NHS soon to talk about capacity. It all comes into money, but basically we can't afford any of these services, especially bearing in mind all the work that's happening in the area to be diminished in any way. In fact, really they should be grown.
Couldn't agree more. John?
Well, the only thing I've got to ask a few local contractors and things like that, if they've been trying to, tender for some jobs that are going, and they seem to be finding it quite hard to get tenders in. And is there anything there, sort of, a safe gap or anything, that anybody's looking at it? They are trying to sort of give work to local people that just seem to be finding that, a lot of the contractors are coming from out with the area, and it's, it's a big thing for the area. And
yeah.
There's just a few sort of smaller sort of firms, that are looking to sort of expand and things like that, seem to be finding it a bit hard to be able to get into anything.
No, well, what we've done is when somebody's looking for an introduction, and I should also say in there, my family business used to be in civils construction and stuff in the area as well. So my father's business, and so I know a lot of the local supply chain and contractors as well. So I can assure you, a lot of them have tapped me in the shoulder as well, saying, "Listen, how do we how do we access what's happening here? I guess the two things I would say, one is that some of the work is just starting to get going, and we're working closely with particularly the landowners, the ports, things to say, and we really need to make sure that if the tier 1 contractor, the top line contractor, is not local, then they have to work hard as they can to make sure that we've got local businesses in the supply chain. And I recently attended a Federation of Small Businesses had a workshop all around how do we help support some of the smaller businesses getting into some of this work that's starting to come out. And it is, I guess, at the start of the journey, if you like. One thing I would say is that you're quite right to say that some of the headline contractors are not from this area. Partly it's because of the nature of the work is so technical. So, for example, some of the quayside infrastructure work we're looking at, there's only 2 or 3 firms in the UK that can do it. But what we do want them to do is to have local supply chain partners underneath them. So at the moment, for example, small scale civils grounds contractors, there's quite a lot of work around and emerging, and there's not that much capacity for some of them. We had a number of meetings, supply chain meetings, both in Easter Ross and in Inverness, with open to businesses to try and get them to understand what's coming through. So we're going to have more of them, and maybe we'll have one in Dingwall. Actually, we've had one in Regordon, we've had one in Inverness, so let's make the next one in Dingwall so that we can just make sure that local suppliers are aware of what's coming. So again, we're at the start of the journey. Councillor Candy, but it's going to be word of mouth as well. We need to make sure that when work comes through, people are ready for it. So one of the things I've said to a few of the smaller businesses in the area is some of these contracts are going to be quite big. So if I was them, I would be either thinking about aligning myself to other small contractors in the area, or indeed, if there are larger contractors are going for it, align with them and say, listen, it'll enhance the strength of your submission if you're aligned to 2 or 3 local businesses. So I know that kind of conversation is happening to try and get people in a stronger position. Even before, I used to say, especially with bidding work, sometimes the race is run before the start. You get to the start of the starting line in terms of how you configure it. So we're happy to have a conversation with anybody you have in mind, but also people need to prep themselves for what comes, because some of the work is specialised, some of it is big contracts. So where are the gaps that they can aim for, as you say, that are most likely to be fruitful? So we'll have another supply chain day. We'll have one in Dingwall this time, and we'll also continue to work with the FSB and other people to try and get everybody ready for what's coming.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Anybody? No. Okay, Callum, I think that's it. Thanks very much for your time this morning. I've taken note of what you said about engagement with community councils, and we'll see if we can have a joint community council meeting for Dingwall and Seaforth. That would take in 5 or 6 or 7 maybe. So we'll keep in touch regarding the possibility of dates for that.
And what I'd also, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. What I'd also say to the members, and you already do this, and Councillor Patterson, some of the things you raised early on as an example of conversations you hear. If there's anything you hear or see and you think, that could really need to be addressed or helped, anytime, please get in touch with me and I'll do what I can to speak to. Because for me, from the area, very much want it to be a success for the local area in the longer term. So, very happy to have a conversation at any point, and really appreciate your guidance and your time.
Thanks for that, and we appreciate yours. We realise you've got a number of area committees today, so good luck with the rest of them. They're more awkward than us.
Well, I'm just about to jump onto Westeros and Lachar. Biz will give me a row for being late, I suspect. But there you go. I'll just to do that.
You can bet on it. You can apologise now on behalf of your lateness.
Not at all. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you now.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Chair, I think Cameron Smith, Inspector, is still on Westeros, but he's almost finished.
Yeah, he is
on his way.
on his way.
And I think Eamon Creepy could possibly jump in, that he is now due on Westeros Committee. So I don't know if you want to pick the other items off from the...
Well, there's what we can. When does the Westeros Committee take place?
It's on Tuesday.
That's it. So he'll be Just up the road there.
Yes.
Carl.
Yes.
Okay, in that case, we're on to Common Good Fund monitoring.
Okay, that's myself, Chairman, thank you very much. You have the Q4 monitoring in front of you, and quite a big report that you intend reading through, but happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Will people now have the monitoring responsibility for us now that Lewis is no longer with us?
Lewis is maintaining responsibility until 2021 is up to speed.
Any questions?
No.
No. No. Okay, what else to do with that? Just note it, is it?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
noted.
Noted. And Dingwall and Seaforth Ward discretionary budget applications approved since the last meeting. Is there in front of you, and for noting, any comments? No.
Sorry. We're on number 8 now, are we?
Yes.
We are, yes.
Yeah, Rose, I want to ask for clarification on the Black Isle Farmers Society, the sponsorship. Where do we stand? Because what I've heard is not what I thought happened at our meeting, so I just need clarification. I thought it was sponsorship, and it was afterwards that I asked Dot, I was asking a question, and she said to me it wasn't a sponsorship, so I want to get clarification in that.
Okay, well, I'm going to look to my left for that, because I thought it was sponsorship as well.
Thank you, yes. So in terms of the way it was done, the Black Isle Farmers Society had applied, well, they had written to us in a letter form asking us for sponsorship. In terms of the audit process, we asked them for a completed board discretionary grant form, which they did during the day. So that was in the process as a grant. We did award £400. The specific element which was noted to the applicant was that the approval was in the form of a grant toward the event, and there was no requirement for any tickets to be provided.
Well, that was not what I thought. And you did say to me that we also agreed that they could not ask for.
I would need to go back to the notes, but I thought from recollection, because you have dropped it in each year, that there would be a further award. But again, because the board discretionary budget, any availability of funding is only guaranteed on a year-to-year basis. You know, we can't commit whether or not we would further fund.
Well, I would like to get clarification in that, you know, that.
We have no ability to know whether or not there will be a board discretionary budget next year.
Yeah.
Until the council sets its budget.
Yeah. I'm still not happy, but we are where we are.
I thought we'd agreed that was going to be the last time that we
That was my understanding.
you know, they've had it. I mean, we certainly gave less this year, and that we just thought that, you know, really at the end of the day there was probably more deserved projects and things happening than to go to probably.
The guidance on the fund is quite clear that it shouldn't be for recurring costs.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Yeah.
I suppose what Margaret's getting at, it wasn't a cost, it was sponsoring.
A sponsor.
I think, but we did agree that we wouldn't sponsor it again, and it was in the book, their annual book as a sponsorship.
Yeah, I meant to ask you, did you manage to go forward for the, you know, because we usually put the sash on them.
No,
No.
I don't usually do that.
Okay,
This is something that's lasted 30 years.
Again next year if it comes in.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Carl, Welcome.
Sorry.
Aye, please meet you.
Graham McKenzie, Chair of the local committee. Margaret Patterson,
Pleased to meet you and welcome.
Sean Kennedy,
Please meet you.
Angela McLean.
Please meet you.
So
Aye. Gillian, I'm here as well. Gillian, aye.
Skin.
Oh, aye. Right, so, so
Can I read some more questions on that item?
Sure.
Margaret and I attended Inverness Community Council, and the chair was asking, we had put in 2 applications, one for Mary Brown Bloom and one for, what was the other one called? And they said they hadn't heard anything because they got an email from Steph to say that
Oh, that's right, yes.
the ward discretionary was being reviewed.
Uh-huh.
Chair,
Yeah.
this specific element that isn't on the agenda, could we maybe take that to business meeting after?
Okay.
But it's just that they say they haven't had anything, just this is what they discussed.
Yeah.
Pick up at the end.
I'd forgotten about that, Angela, till you said it.
Okay, is that it for that? Okay, we'll move back on the agenda then to the area performance study. Callum, you're very welcome.
thank you. Thanks very much.
Wish you well in your new post.
Thanks very much.
I've always had good relationships with your predecessors.
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll continue.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So if you'd just like to take us through it.
Perfect. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for having me. And sorry for being late. I was at another ward meeting. So anyway, I suppose just by way of introducing myself, I'm Colin Smith. I'm now Chief Inspector for the North Highland area. I was previously doing this role. I was recently doing the Detective Chief Inspector role for public protection for Highlands and Islands, and then I was offered this role and gratefully took it. I previously worked in Dingwall and Inverness for 7 years. Between up to 2017, so I loved it. I'm delighted to be back and hopefully be able to do some good work to try and carry on the good work that's gone on before. So I'll probably just if you're okay, I'll just run through the report as is, and then maybe take questions towards the end. If there is anything burning as I go through it, then please jump in and ask. If there's anything as well as I go through things, aware this is the first time I've been here, so if there's anything I'm doing that's not with Norm and it's not what you want to tell me, and I'll address it.
We'll soon tell you.
That's right. And I suppose the other thing I would say, because I said it actually the last board meeting, I was probably said it at the end, and I should have said at the beginning, going forward, so I've just taken it, Richard Ross has moved on. He's not moved far, Richard's just moved into the Chief Inspector role for policing, which is good for all of us, because he's familiar with the area. And he's just gone in there. So road policing wise, we've got a definite in there if we needed it anyway. But Richard's there. Richard's role is now vacant. Whoever takes that role on will be identified probably early September, end of August, early September. I'm not sure it's advertised at the moment, so that'll play through. Meantime, and even after that. If you don't have an email, I'm quite happy to send it. So anything at all, just email me. Just let me know, and I'll address it meantime, and I'll address it as well after whoever comes into Richard's role comes into Richard's role. I was just saying the last ward meeting that was at there, when I come on to the road policing section of things, I was actually making the point that a number of the detections, high speed detections, which ultimately shouldn't be happening, but if they're happening, we're better to detect it. They've only come about through feedback from constituents, which have led to us then targeting certain areas, which have led to these people being captured speeding. So it works hand in hand in terms of actually how we operate. So the introduction there it's pretty standard. If I just go straight into the introduction that's on there, there's nothing really. Page number 2 is the introduction. There's nothing on there. The accounting period it's a nice tidy accounting period. It's 1st of April 2023 through to March this year. It is. I mean, although it's an accounting, it's a whole accounting year. It's obviously now dated in terms of the statistics. We're now 6 months into a new period, but there is kind of trends that we can pick up on and look at. The other aspects of it there. So the figures that I'm going to give you here as I go through it. I'm not sure previously what happened, but these are for North Highland as a whole. So not for a ward. Our system won't allow us to break it down into wards. We can get to North Highland area, which is the command area, so everything from Kesser Bridge north right up to Caithness, taking right around the west coast, effectively the NC 500 if you want to look at that. So that's what the figures will be. The other thing is worthy of mention when I come on to the 3-year and particularly the 5-year average. COVID is still a feature. We'll get a point where we'll manage to get away from COVID, but at the moment, the 5 years, it goes back, is it? Yeah. So the 5-year figure is slightly skew-off given the counting period that includes COVID. The other bits and pieces on there, frauds, serious assaults, and bits and pieces I touched on, I'll come on to that as I work through the report. So the priorities there are page number 3, which are come about as a result of kind of feedback from yourselves, feedback from other partners and the public. They are relevant, as relevant when they were put in place as they are now. They're still absolutely relevant. They're still what we deal with day in, day out and what affects most of the public that we're serving. Road safety, each one of them have got a page when I come on to it. Road safety, road crime, antisocial behaviour, violence and disorder, acquisitive crime, protecting vulnerable people, serious and organised crime, terrorism and public order. So they're the priorities, and the report will reflect the performance against those priorities as I go through things. So each of the pages here, I'll just come on to the numbers, page number 4 now, which is road safety and road crime. Each of the pages have got an intention and objective. I don't intend to read through each one of them on every occasion. They're there to be read at your leisure, but in essence, each occasion, the objective is to work with partners, work with the public, work with all partners, to see yourselves, everyone, to try and come about the results that we're looking for. So the wording might change slightly, but that in essence is the purpose. So if I take you straight into, for example, the road traffic data there. So we've got 3 bits of data there. The number of fatalities is the first one that's on there. Now, in 2023-2024, in the North Highland area, 7 people tragically lost their lives on the road. That's 7 people too many. However, there's a context that's the lowest level it's been at any point in the last 5 years. It's down 6 on the previous year, and it's down against the 3 and 5 year average. There's always a context. I mean, there's nothing more that matters than the year here. The fact people have lost their lives, that's principally the thing that matters more than anything. But there's a context here that these figures can go up or down quite quickly and dramatically, depending on the context of one accident could have 4 fatalities if you had worst case now, something like that. So there's, but on a positive note, it is down there. The drink drive offences that's on there, that's a significant spike and is worthy of note. So it's up 110 on the year-on-year average, and it's up 100 over 100 on the 3 and 5 year average as well. Now, drink driving by its very nature, it can be looked at in any way. It can be looked at in the one sense that it's bad is happening, in the other sense it's good that we're detecting it. The key thing that's probably worthy of mentioning here is that drug driving that has changed and is continuing to change. Is the way we detect drug driving has changed. So until probably in the last couple of years, we used to, it was probably quite a simplistic way of detecting drug driving. We'd find somebody driving a car, kind of the driving was not as it should be. We'd stop the car, take a person out, we'd get them to do basic things like walking along a white line. We'd then take them back to the police station if that wasn't right. We'd then take a blood sample and look at their pupils, their eyes and bits and pieces like that. That was long, drawn out processes that very often didn't necessarily, it was subjective even sometimes because there was a medical opinion would be involved in it. Even if somebody had tablets in their system, whether or not that actually affected their ability to drive or not was subjective in a medical opinion. What's changed now is that the road policing officers in particular, but it's starting to spread out a bit from just away from just the road policing officers, is that we have effectively an on-the-spot test that we do with drivers. There's a saliva test, and it can show up for multiple different drugs: cocaine, ecstasy, cannabis, bits and pieces like that. Cannabis in particular, one that stays in your system for a long time. That's capturing a massive amount of people. So it's an on the roadside test that we do, and then we take a person back to the station, we take blood, and then it kind of goes from there. So much so that we're kind of beyond this now, but when we were in the early stages of it, we'd actually flooded the lab with so many tests that we were actually causing the lab some problems. That's been resolved, but that is part of the rise, and so it's a positive thing on the whole. Speeding offences again, and I think this is relevant here, and I'll kind of touch on it towards the end of the report as well, but rightly, your constituents will come forward, as I would myself as a member of the public, highlighting concerns around about speedy motorists in different areas, in particular built-up areas around schools, etc. This kind of highlights the fact that it's not ever going to address the need for more, but we've detected 749 offences, or we've detected 99.9% of those 749 reported offences, but that's a 209 uprise from 540 the previous year, which shows that there is definitely an intention and a desire and an effort to try and raise the numbers of detections that we're getting around about that. It's probably worthy. I don't have specific answers for this, if I'm being honest. I can surmise somewhat, but the next graph below that shows that North Highland has, so this is in policing areas, North Highland, Inverness and South Highland. North Highland in the 5-year average and in the 23-24 year has got higher numbers of drink and drug drivers than the Inverness area, Inverness City, and the South Highland area commands. Now, in particular, if you look at the 23-24 North Highland against South Highland figures, it's 3 times as many. Again, it's a positivity around about detecting, there's a negativity around about the fact that exists in the first place. I would suggest that the fact that we have road policing officers based in Dingwall is a positive thing there. That's not to say the service isn't delivered in other areas of the Highlands, they are, but if they're basing themselves in Dingwall, starting in Dingwall, finishing in Dingwall, it means they have to start and stop here every single time. If they're intending to go somewhere else and they drive down through the A9 towards Inverness and they come across some drink driving, then there's a capture there that wouldn't have happened if they were based in Edinburgh, for example. So that's the kind of headlines around the road policing. If I go on page number 5, antisocial behaviour, disorder and violence. So there's the detection rate for murders obviously is, you would want it to be 100%, it is 100%. Tragically, we've had 2 murders in the period. They relate to one case in Inverness and one case in Caithness, both of which are detected and go through the court system as we speak. In terms of assaults, you see there's a reduction in 17 in reported assaults against the year-on-year average, and again is down on the 3- and 5-year average. Serious assault is much and such the same really in terms of the 3, 5 and year-on-year data there, but it is up one on previous year. It's still a relatively low number, 27 across the whole course of the year. Again, as definitions change, the definition of serious assault has changed, I think it's this year now, so that can go up. So there's context to these things, how they operate. And drug possession, drug possession kind of probably marries in a wee bit with county lines, which I'll talk about towards the end. But again, it's up in terms of the amount of drug possession cases that we've got. I probably would highlight, the key thing I would probably highlight there is the detection rates as a whole. It's 100% for murder, 73% for assaults, serious assaults 85%, and drug possessions 87%. They are absolutely matching average national data and higher on most occasions. So that's where we're at with that. The bit below that, the commentary below that, it just provides a bit of commentary around about work that we try and do around prevention and intervention. So we've got a harm prevention officer who's funded by the NHS through the Adult and Drug Partnership, and they're based in headquarters in Inverness, but they provide a service across both Highlands and Islands, and they effectively work with people who are vulnerable substance misusers to try and actually reduce the offending and the victims effectively. And then the second bit there is around about a national campaign around about knife crime. We thankfully don't have, we don't take it for granted, but we don't have people running about just carrying knives in the North Highland area. We do come across it, we don't come across it every day, but it's something where well aware of, and we kind of deal with.
That's your question.
Yeah.
How do you define a detection in terms of transpossession? I mean, is that,
So yeah.
I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah.
And I'm surmising that you get community public information and act on it, and sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. Would that be,
So sometimes on a most basic level, if we stopped a car and searched the car and found a block of cannabis, but say a personal amount of cannabis in the central console, for example, and we had 4 people in that car, we need to try and identify who the suspect is. That can, in those kind of, in a small possession case, that can provide a difficulty. There's a limit to how far our inquiry can go. If that was a significant, say, a block of cannabis, a 9-bar of cannabis, which would be worth hundreds of pounds, and that was supply levels, we could take that a level further, look at financials and so on and so forth. But so that would be an example. But yeah, no, you're right. It's I'm more intrigued. I think the one I actually am more intrigued by, is I don't actually have an answer for, is how we've detected 99.9% of speeding cases. I'm wondering what that 0.1 of a case is that actually wasn't detected. So, because if you catch somebody speeding, you generally, I mean, I suppose the answer there could be that if you catch a motorbike speeding and they take off and we never work out who's been, because that's what we do get sometimes, motorbikes in particular, they'll take off because they know they've got the advantage of speed and size. But yeah, so that's it. The next one, so I would kind of probably highlight the last page there as probably generally good news, good work. I probably have slightly more concerns, a wee bit more in the next one. There's the acquisitive crime section here. It both shows societal trends fitting into policing, and it probably it shows partly difficulty in policing some of those societal trends, and then there's housebreaking. We're not even going to try and sugarcoat it. 25% detection rate for housebreaking isn't where it should be. That should be higher, and I'm not going to try and sugarcoat that. But so if I go through where we're at, if I take the bottom 2 just to start off with, so theft by shoplifting and theft of motor vehicle. The theft of motor vehicle, I'll probably just kind of gloss over that in terms of there's up 12 against the year-on-year average, and it's also up on the 3 and 5 year average. That may be, but it's probably less likely. It's maybe correlated to what I'm about to highlight here, the theft by shoplifting, which is definitely worthy of note. So theft by shoplifting is up 194 on the year-on-year average. It's effectively, it's more than doubled year-on-year, 2022 to 2023, 23 to 24, and it's up significantly on the 5 year and 3 year average as well. What we're finding there is that isn't necessarily, sometimes it is, but that's not necessarily people going into Tesco and stealing televisions or computer consoles and bits and pieces like that. It is to some extent still the case. But what we're now finding is that there are people going into these premises and stealing food. That's not something that we previously had. I'm sure there is data many, many years ago where there was societal needs that people were going out and addressing through stealing, but certainly in the most recent past decade or so, that's not something we've been finding as a feature. That is now something we're finding is the case. I was asked at the last ward meeting, would more food banks and such like address some of the need that these people are going shoplifting for? And the honest answer is that it may address some of that. The reality that some of these people that we're dealing with for stealing food, they have also been stealing other things at other times as well. So there's a bit of everything in there, but certainly what there is in there is a trend there in terms of whether it's people feeling more impoverished through societal changes and then going stealing. It wouldn't be too far from the part to kind of look at that and maybe surmise that might be the case. The fraud aspect here is something that's worthy of note as well. So frauds are actually down on the year-on-year average, but much and such the same for the 3 year and up on the 5 year. So it's much and such the same. The detection rate is poor. There's no way of sugarcoating that either. But in comparison to the housebreaking one, which is less qualifiable, if I'm being honest, the fraud is, what we're finding a lot of the time is now we've got victims in our areas, but the suspects are often abroad. Yeah. And certainly virtually never in the Highland area. The closest that we would have a suspect would be central belt of Scotland, then maybe into the kind of north of England, central of England, and south of England, and then abroad beyond that, but more often not abroad. And it's almost, almost always online, on phones, and so on and so forth. And often, unfortunately, it's elderly people who have been victims, sometimes for quite significant amounts of money. Some of banking frauds will come into that as well, where victims actually are refunded through the banks. We had another couple of this weekend. The banks refund that, so there's no loss, but it's a crime. That's something that we are continuing to work with. So the Adult Protection Committee, for example, and others around about trying to kind of raise the awareness. So our own prevention intervention officers will go out and do work around about highlighting the risk that there is to people. But that's something that it's societal, it's national, it's certainly not unique to our own area. Housebreaking, I would anticipate you might ask for more detail on this, and I'm happy to. I don't have the detail to hand, but I'm happy to kind of contextualise this more around about where we're at with that. But the year on year, so we're up 3. It's not a massive rise in terms of the amount of housebreakings we have, but the detection rate it should be higher than that. And to give some context and some justification as to why it's low, is some of the challenges we have is that we will have travelling criminals coming into an area and they will do 10 housebreakings in one night and then move on, kind of thing. And then we come in the morning and we're completely behind. They'll have come from quite far. Often, for example, we had some from the Northampton area of England who'd come up and hit Lochaber recently, for example. And that can only be part of that answer, but that's certainly one area of performance that needs to be addressed. And having just come into the last 3 weeks, is something I'll be looking at for this year as well. So, and then the commentary there again just highlights some of the work that we're doing with banking protocol, partial scam, and rural watch around about trying to kind of prevent some of that work, prevent some of the offences. I'll quickly jump on to protecting vulnerable people on page number 7 there. So quite obviously, this is some of the work that we deal with probably most every single day. The rape figures there, that needs some context given the detection rate looking as poor as it does. So the amount of rapes reported is pretty in keeping with previous years. It's up 2 on the previous year, but generally in keeping. The detection rate is 28%. The detection rate, that's not to say that the reported rapes for the year 23-24 won't be detected. They will be detected. We run at a general average of a 50 to 60% of a detection rate. That's in keeping and is slightly above average for the national average. However, what happened, and this is again, it's just been frankly honest, in keeping with some of the challenges that other public sectors have faced over the past year, we faced some difficulties within the police, and there were some areas that the staffing wasn't at the level that it needed to be at. The rape investigation team, which is based in Inverness, was one of those teams. I say this because it's actually the role that I've just come out of. They were running at about 50% of the capacity of staff that they needed to have. There was a reason for that. Part of the reason for that is because at some point, police leaders need to make a decision about where there are gaps, where those gaps are going to be. And they're not going to be in the front line. So the rape investigation team isn't on the front line. They are kind of behind it, such as detectives behind it. And it is possible to detect those crimes later on, but it just means that in the year, so this year, for example, I would anticipate that the detection rate might be much higher than we would expect, because the rape team is now up to the standard, the staffing needs. So that's where it's at. I would just kind of give some confidence around about that the rape investigation that we carry out across the Highlands and Islands has never, the quality of the service has never been as high as it is now, because we've put so much kind of resource towards it. Domestic crime, we deal with day in, day out. It's down 84 in the year-on-year average, and the detection rate is remaining stable at 61%. That's above the average as well. The average, national average, is about 50 to 55%. Hate crime, the important thing to mention here, the hate crime is this figures don't take in any of the new hate crime legislation. So that came in the 1st of April, the Hate Crime Act. So this is all the legislation that we've seen previously. That's up slightly again year on year. We're not finding that there is any particular areas that concern us around about particular communities within our wider communities, particular minority communities that are being targeted as such. I mean, some of those figures, for example, will be police officers carrying out arrests and being abused themselves, effectively. So, for example, racial abuse, homophobic abuse, whatever it may be. So there's nothing that jumps out that gives concern there. But I would anticipate those numbers will go up this year as well. The new hate crime legislation has brought in protected characteristics that didn't previously exist. For example, age. So ageism is a criminal offence where it previously wasn't. Missing people information is on there. That just needs a bit of context again. That is a Highlands and Islands figure, because this system is a national system, and here that doesn't allow us to give command area or ward area figures. But we're down 107. We're down quite significantly in terms of how many missing persons we've dealt with this past year. I would kind of highlight the work there. Looked after children, that's down 90. We've done a lot of work with looked after children. That attaches to county lines again. We've got looked after children going missing is a massive concern for us, particularly when we don't know where they are. So we've taken in a thing called a Philomena protocol, which works around about looking at the looked after children, where they go, not necessarily reporting them. So some of the things that it's time to kind of get away from stigmatising looked after children. I've got two daughters. If one of my daughters didn't turn up when I told her to come home at 7 o'clock, for example, she doesn't. She's only 7, so she doesn't know that late anyway. But if she was, for example, I wouldn't then be phoning up the police at 7:30 and say she's reporting her missing. Often what happens in children's homes is that exactly that happens. It would probably be 10 o'clock or something before I would phone the police. And what then starts to happen is the police are chasing, appropriately, but trying to kind of trace these missing children, and then the cycle starts where they're unhappy about that and so on. So the Philomena protocol, along with the police officers we've got attached to the children's homes, is trying to kind of work with the children's homes to report them missing at appropriate junctures, but then knowing where they are, who they're with, and then working with social work and preventions and interventions and the county lines team to try and kind of work around about that. And that kind of has had, there's quite a significant reduction there. It's a massive reduction actually. It's a reduction of 90 there from 131. So, and then we've got other kind of work we've done around. So we've got Herbert protocol, which has come in as well, which looks at, because we're starting to see this more often now, elderly people who are missing with Alzheimer's and bits and pieces like that. We've got a lot of that, so we're doing a bit of work around with that as well. And then finally, just jumping on serious organised crime and counter-terrorism, just as a finishing point, so page 8 and 9. So serious and organised crime, county lines is something that is coming on the periphery of even this ward area that we're talking about, North Highland. So Easter Ross and Wester Ross would be the areas of concern that we have. When I say Wester Ross, probably more thinking maybe more Black Isle area, actually, more rather than directly into Wester, but certainly Muir of Ord, Peffer slightly. It's not so much that you will walk around these streets and see this happening. That's the whole point and the difficulty of county lines, that it is in particular areas. Dingwall, Ballness, Invergordon, these areas as well is kind of spread out from Inverness effectively, and it kind of has it comes in waves. It's not necessarily there all the time. It's a challenge for us because of how quickly they move, how quickly they go from house to house. Even on an operational basis, for us to get a warrant, we don't just sometimes we can get a warrant in 2 or 3 hours. Actually, sometimes it might take us a day to get a warrant. It depends on what's happening in the court system. That's a real problem with them moving from house to house. So we're having to adopt our tactics around about that. And that then features into the children going missing and so on and so forth, and the concern we have. But in terms of drug supply offences, it is up year-on-year average, so 39 over the 21 the previous year. Some of that certainly relates to serious and organised crime in terms of county lines, and it's the most prevalent single area of organised crime that we would have, although we still have our own local drug dealers who aren't necessarily connected to county lines, who have always been about, and that's part of decision organised crime as well. There have been some good results around about that as well, particularly in the East Ross area and into Dingwall, I suppose. And then finally, counter-terrorism. I don't really have much to add around about that, apart from, we work under the contest strategy for counter-terrorism. The prevent strand of that is probably the most prevalent and most important area around about that, is where we come into, we work on the prevent strategy around about with statutory partners and anybody else who has information around about vulnerable people who may become at risk of extremism or any other form of any form of kind of become involved in counter-terrorism, terrorism. So the prevent side of things will be where we see that we would work with education, social work, wherever else it may be, with our prevent delivery unit, and we would actually have multi-agency meetings to discuss why they might be vulnerable and why they might be at risk of becoming involved in terrorism or extremism. And a part of that would be, like, for example, if it's in the news at the moment, far right kind of extremism. If I'm being honest, that's probably more likely to be the case than other areas of terrorism that we would find in Highlands. And we would work with multi-agencies to try and understand why they might be at risk of exploitation, effectively, to then become terrorists, if you want to put it like that, and then try and start to work with the partners and the people on a voluntary basis to address those vulnerabilities in that person. Where we can't do that, we would take executive action and other means. But that would be the counter-terrorism one. And finally, the last one there is just the statistics for the whole past 5 years. There's probably 2 points I would highlight there. One is, if you look at the very top here of page number 10, just where it says total crimes and offences, that's up year on year. So we're up 1,000 more offences than we were in 2018-19 that have been reported. That's a good thing, but in the context of public sector reform and how we're having to kind of work with trying to do more with less, it has its challenges. There's no two ways about that. And then I suppose the final thing I would mention there at section number 8, road traffic offences. I just highlight this probably just maybe hopefully to give you some confidence and hopefully it might be something that you could take to your own constituents if you're asked about it, is that when we look at actually some of the work, some of the things that are reported to us and some of the work that we do most, it's actually around about with traffic. We're the numbers there, I mean, they speak for themselves when you look at them in comparison to other numbers. There are significant numbers. For example, mobile phone offences there, they're higher now, 81 in comparison to 34 and 5 years ago. Speeding offences, it's consistently high there. There's 3 years been lower, but it's the second highest there that we've done in the last 5 years. So we try and adapt and try and kind of meet the public need where it's made aware to us. And so hopefully that's a bit of.
That's very helpful, very comprehensive. Thanks very much. Certainly answered any questions I had. Anybody else?
I think the only thing I'd like to think, a very in-depth report and everything like that. Can we not go out sometimes and tell the community councils that they absolutely cry out just for a courtesy visit? And I mean, the 2.5 years I've been a councillor, there hasn't been one police officer gone to one community council meeting. And to be quite honest, I think you're letting yourselves down a little bit by not attending them, because they do ask and for a bit of attendance. I'm not asking for somebody to go to every single one, but perhaps a presentation like this that we could get community councils together and just do a heap of them in one foul order.
We were talking about that when Carl was speaking. If we were going to have one for the Inverness Freeport, then why not? Two item agenda.
Yeah. So I mean, I thanks for that, because I thought that was raised. So I'll tell you what should happen right now, and what you just said was happening isn't what should be happening. What should be happening right now is, so every single community council should have an identified police officer that is a point of contact effectively. They should then be providing a report of some kind to. That's not part of the problem here. Is it's not been standardised. We've not standardised anything across North Highland, and Richard was looking at this. I will sincerely take it forward over the next number of weeks. Once Richard's a lot of movement in terms of inspectors, so the Allness inspectors just changed, the Dingwall inspectors just changing, and the Caithness inspector, and I've changed. So literally the 4 who are leading the North Highland area have changed. That brings its own challenges, brings its own kind of opportunities as well. But Richard was looking at that around about a standardised report that will go out to the different areas. I probably want to take that a step further, just touching what you said there, Councillor, around about, I would want, this is my idea, but it's not going to be my idea that we'd ultimately do. I would want to kind of bring if I could, all the community council chairs together, maybe twice yearly or something like that. Now that can be in teams, it can be in person, it can be whatever it may be, or whatever it is that the community council chairs would actually say was beneficial. To then meet with me and or some of the other inspectors and anybody else that fitted into that. One of the challenges that we have, and I'll give you an example. So, and I won't mention the council, the community council, it's not fair because there may be a context behind it. We had a request through an MSP from a community council, which I think actually is in this ward, I'm pretty sure it's in this ward, for somebody to present. Now, Richard Ross has then responded to that email to the chair, and to this day he's never had a response back. So we'll chase it and try and get that response. But there's an aspect to it, that's not blaming the community council at all. There's an aspect to it that's fallen away on the police side of things, and there's an aspect to it that the police probably, if we overpromise, we'll just underdeliver. There's no point in me saying that we'll send somebody along to every community council. It's just it'll just never happen. I'm being perfectly honest with you. Because
I think everybody is aware it's not going to happen, because you've been that slashed with manpower and things like that. So we do that. But what I'm saying, there's just a little bit of common courtesy, and maybe what we've just said. As Councillor Mackenzie said about the Green Freeport, will get everybody together and do it once, and because yes, the community councils do get these reports, but they're all just copy and paste and sort of things like that, and it doesn't reflect well on you guys. At the end of the day, there's still a little bit about policing and things like that. I was a police officer for 5 years myself, so I've got a little bit of knowledge of it. People being able to see you. There's a huge thing about that, and I'm not looking for somebody to go every single community council. Once a year, I say 2.5 years, I've not seen one police officer at anything apart from a copy and paste, and it's pretty shoddy.
No, I will definitely afford. I think
I would support that. I mean, there's one thing it gets brought up at every community council. And I don't think they expect a presence anymore, right?
Just a report.
And I've made that quite clear. But they were always promised a report. There was 2 things coming out of that. One, John's highlighted that it's check which ones are different from last month, which gives a bad impression. And on numerous occasions, they just don't get one. I've got a community council, we've got a community council tonight. Minutes arrived yesterday, first thing it said was no police report received. So we either do it or we don't.
No, I agree. And I don't. And you're absolutely right, both of you. So I'll take that away, and I'll try and. I would be happy, for example. I think, if I'm being honest with you, and as much as they've got, I don't know how many community councils there are. I don't know how feasible what I'm going to say is, but I would be happy, for example, that we tried to actually get some kind of contract, if you want to put it out, where we say, right, we will make sure that somebody from one of the inspectors, or even the sergeants turns up at least once a year or something to that effect, and then they get the reports. So would they meet every quarter? They meet community councils every month.
Every month.
Every month, wow. But So I'll need to tie in with the community council chairs, because there's no point me saying something that actually doesn't work for them. So, but yeah, I will definitely take that away to 100%.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yeah, I had that down as an issue in that we've raised it with Richard previously, and I think even his predecessor, that we wanted to ensure that if it's policing by consent, you have to work with the local communities, and they are frustrated that they are just getting cut and paste. And I mean, at Maryborough Community Council the other night, they said that it was a cut and paste, but it hadn't had not any information about the crimes that had happened in the village that everybody was aware of. I mean, it was on CCTV and on Facebook as well, the crimes, but they weren't in the cut and paste that they had been sent, and they found it really frustrating. The other is about the county lines and the cuckooing. We have had I'd asked previously for a briefing, and we did eventually get a briefing about that, because then what happens on a monthly basis in Inverness, they get updates on whatever the councillors as an organisation want to hear. And I know it's different in Inverness because there's a lot more of them together, but I find it's very informative, and we can raise issues at those meetings as well during chairs. The other is on the in here in the start of your report, Callum, you talked about, and I've raised this with Richard and maybe with his new job he'll be able to take this forward, is that we maintain our presence on our Highland roads, enforcing road traffic legislation, improving road safety and investigating road traffic collisions. But please don't investigate all road traffic
collisions. No.
But, and then there are some places like at the 835, which is the main distributor road through our wards, there's a lot of the junctions, especially the B9163 and the Mulberry Road, where there are sometimes collisions on the same day or not far apart because of the issues at the junction, and sometimes it's the light, sometimes it's just the traffic themselves. But in order for us as a council to work in partnership to get improvements to those junctions, we have to show that there has been accidents. And what the feedback that I get is that, well, the police say there's not been an accident, but I was told before that even if the police don't attend, they can note the fact there was an accident. There might not have been a fatality, but note that there's an accident, which helps to build on the case that there needs to be improvements to those junctions.
So my understanding, and I'll take us away and come back to you, I'd be astounded if I'm not right when I say this. My understanding is, so you're right in terms of we wouldn't go to, historically, I mean, we go back 15 years ago, we would go to every accident, you know. Yes, that's right. You might be out of the brush myself a few times. But we don't now. However, if there's an accident reported to us, we would log it and then show a no attendance, for example. And that would be where two people have had a bump, a minor bump, and they're exchanging details, and there's just no issues whatsoever. And that's that. And to be honest, that's pretty fair enough, because actually it's actually, sometimes you want police involved in these things. So actually, an accident will happen rather than actually just trying to find blame all the time. But I would think, I mean, it should be the case that every one of them recorded. So any time there's an accident that's phoned in, it should be recorded, and the police would be able to then provide that statistics. So let me go away. I'll come back to you with that, and I'll find out about that, Councillor. See, just before I lose my train of thought, can I come back? See what you said there about county lines and Judy meeting that she has. So I'm kind of roughly aware of what Judy does, only very roughly. And I know she's previously had an input from, I think, Craig Still, who's the Deputy Chief Inspector for CID. It's Craig. So Craig and I worked, so I worked with Craig until recently. So see, in terms of going forward, what would be helpful in terms of, because I mean, I can, anything that you feel will be helpful that Judy is doing, I can do it here as well. It's not, granted there's more people there, but it's...
But it doesn't just, for the last one, it did take a long time for Richard to organise it, to be fair. And I think Callum did it online, and so the number of the wards were involved in it, so we all took part
Okay.
online. And so a bit like Inverness, when
Okay.
you've got the whole city committee,
Yeah, yeah.
there's a number of wards
I think I'm
involved.
going through communities place. I'm chair of communities place, I'm responsibility.
Yeah.
He's on the police in Highland, so he runs Shepherd fairly regularly.
Yeah.
We had a very, very useful briefing. I can't, it was a guy, it wasn't
It was
Craig, so yeah.
Did it.
It was incredibly
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
It took an hour, which, you know, is really available
Yeah.
at full council meetings, but I've asked the convener to consider bringing them back so the benefits can be shared with the full council
Yeah.
rather than the
Yeah.
15 or 20
Yeah.
people up there at that. So, you know, if you can help with facilitating that.
Yeah.
that would be-
I know. So would you think, so for example, would you want me to get Craig, I mean, so for example, I could get Craig to come in and do one for the wards for the
I
North
did
area?
do that.
Oh, you
Did
did,
that a
okay.
couple of months ago
Okay,
for us online. I think Lewis spoke to him about, but
Okay.
spoke to Richard about doing it.
so going forward, would you want something similar here, or was that what you're
It
looking
was
at?
something similar that would inform us as local councillors what's going on.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to just be county lines, but
Yeah.
there are other things
Yeah.
that are happening.
So, I mean, straight off the top of my head, I mean, I'm just thinking, because we're talking about road policing, for example, you know, so Donny McKinnon, or actually Richard now, actually, but Donny or Richard, on a road policing aspect, I mean, I could get him to come in and give an input to all the wards, and kind of do it. I could do it on Teams, and people,
Yeah.
everyone could see it. And there's others, I suppose, as well. For example, I don't know. I mean, there's deputy inspectors who can run child protection investigation, just as I was saying there. There's pieces like that. Preventions and interventions, even, for example, around about, you know, some of the work that happens.
Yeah.
So, well, I mentioned harm prevention officer. I mean, we've got taken one of the lead officers. So, yeah, I mean, if that would help, yeah, I'll do that.
I think that would be useful.
No problem. I'll leave it on me. Okay.
Okay, folks.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. That was
Thanks
it.
again.
Yeah, no bother.
Can I give you a date for your diary? Just
Oh, aye.
something locally.
Yeah.
Saturday, October 19th, Snowman Rally
Yeah.
takes place, and it will be coming to Dingwall. It has done for the last
Yeah,
4
yeah.
years. It's never really been an issue, but the high street will be closed off,
Ah.
will be secured, just for your information.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, definitely.
The thing that Richard always used to ask me was, our county will that day, and they aren't.
They aren't, no, yeah, that's good. No, that's excellent. And I'm sending at all. I just drop me an email and I'll get back. The community council thing, I'll get back to you on that, and I'll get some action on that.
Can you let Dot have your email address and then she gets circulated to us?
Yeah, I think she's on board.
Can you circulate that to the member?
I can do that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I know, but thank you.
I think you've got a neat pencil now, the leader of the council.
I think that's this week, is it?
I think it's.
That was very thorough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can't resolve my problem though, and that's when there's an accident on the Cromarty Bridge. Can't get out my gate for hours. Traffic is horrendous. A couple of weeks ago.
I should really wear a jacket or weird than It's actually most of it was actually probably. But thanks. I'll be back to you on the other points. Thanks
Thank
very much.
you. He should be, because he was there. Yes, he's still there.
Okay.
Where is he? Is he online?
Yeah, he's got his camera turned off.
Oh.
It's on for the police.
Ian.
There he is.
Good morning,
Or just
councillors.
along?
Morning, Ian.
Right.
Okay, it's been a bit hair scaring this morning. I understand you've been to other committees as well, so this is the last item on our agenda, and it's an winter service plan, so over to you.
Same as
Thank you. Well, councillors, it's this time of year again, the end of the summer and the beginning of autumn. This is the winter report for the coming season, and it's essentially the same report, the same routes, the same resources as previously. Would councillors like me to go through this in detail, or would you like to move on to questions and answers?
She sent us it in advance, so.
Yeah, we've had it for some time. As you say, it hasn't really changed. I'll open it up for questions.
Just It was for noted really because
No, I don't.
Just make sure.
Unless we were worried about something.
Filled up.
Yeah, that's the salient point Councillor Kenny raises, that make sure the grounds are filled up prior to the start of the season, and as far as possible they're kept.
Checked, yeah.
Checked. That's quite important.
Certainly, councillors, I'll check that, yeah.
I'll get a couple of comments. So one is, as you've seen from today as well, Ian, there was a heavy downpours, and I know every time you come I ask about the gully emptying, which needs to be, make sure that that's done as we move into winter. The guys have been busy doing the potholes and some resurfacing, and I have to say that from the work I've seen, they've done a great job. I know that the next place, I think it's a tractor that's going to be doing Dingwall, but they have been pretty busy filling in a number of potholes throughout the ward, so thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor McLean.
I think I'd like to come out with something that Angela's just said. When are we due the gully cleanings again before the winter? Because there has been quite a lot of comments coming that the ring road is it's full of vegetation, a lot of them. So, and I did have a look the other day about it. There are some of them. I was going to actually email Laura this week. There are some of the culverts really need cleaned out. You know, it's.
Well, there is one based in Dingwall.
Yeah, we have the new gully sucker, which is kept in the Dingwall area. It's been off the road recently with a damaged arm. You know, the big boom that the guys moved to clean the actual gullies. That's now repaired and it's back in use. Each week we have a plant meeting to make sure that all our kit across my 3 roads officers is fully utilised. If it can't be crewed or it's off the road, then we make sure that we try and utilise our equipment to the best possible use. There is the odd week due to sickness, holidays, etc., when the gully sucker can't be crewed, but I can say with certainty that the Dingwall gully sucker has been in the flood-prone areas and continues to be used. We also have a second gully sucker that moves between my road officer in Easter Ross and also out in the west. All the gully suckers are fully utilised, but the Dingwall one concentrates on the Dingwall and associated flood-prone areas.
Well, well, I was going to say that, well, Ian's the boss of it. Can we have some reassurance that we might do the ring road, especially in the next fortnight, especially before the schools go back? So, you know, if there's heavy rain, at least the kids aren't going to have to be going through flood water. So I strongly recommend that it might be an idea to just go and have a look at the ring road gullies.
I've taken a note, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things I just wanted to raise in under staff establishment, and I get you, what it is, but I've lost a wee bit of track about who these people are. I wonder if you could put names to the people. I don't need the officers.
Yeah, certainly. Well, obviously I'm the roads operation manager. Our senior technician is Trevor Fraser. We have the technician is Michelle Laurie, and the structural technician, our previous structural technician Neil Reid has recently retired, and we're getting a replacement. I can't remember his first name. His surname is Geddy. He's starting on the 2nd September. His principal role is looking after bridges, culverts, retaining walls. I have 2 roads inspectors covering Ross and Cromarty, John Stewart, who's based in the east, and Eric Morrison, who covers the west. The split is on the ward boundary. Obviously Laura is the roads officer for Dingwall and Seaforth area. The operational support officer is Lauren Urquhart, and I've got Ian MacDonald as the foreman in Greenhill Depot.
Okay, I'd be really grateful if you could maybe forward that to Doc for onward transmission. I'm taking note of all of them. It's just handy to know.
Absolutely, that's a good idea if we can, yeah.
Certainly, councillors, yeah.
And without intruding on his personal circumstances, I understand that Trevor's off for and maybe off for a while. Who would cover road traffic orders in his absence?
We are, Councillor Mackenzie, myself and Michelle are covering temporary traffic orders, and I'm doing the permanent traffic orders. We did have some assistance from our colleagues in Caithness and Sutherland, but we can manage to do it ourselves. So if that situation changes, we can pull in extra staff as required.
Okay, can I just give you advance warning of one that's coming up for our area? It's the 19th of October, it's a Saturday, and the Snowman Rally is coming back to town. It's been here a few times. Laura's always very helpful, but if we'll need a traffic order for a road closure for a few hours on that day.
That's not bad. That's the 19th of October, Councillor Mackenzie, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, I'll look out for that one.
Okay, thank you. All right, members, anything else?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Take care.
Okay, councillors. Thank you.
I think everybody in the Western Hemisphere will know about the 19th of October. Now,
Well,
you've got it in everywhere, Graham. Fair play to you.
These things,
Yeah,
sometimes you're less off, and nothing happens,
I wondered why he wasn't here in person.
because he's got 3 to do.
He has, yeah, he's also got Caithness to do too.
Caithness and Western
Yes.
Wales.
We're all on today.
All today.
Yes.
All the same time.
Okay, folks, the only thing we didn't cover
No, it's
was
just
the
because it's
minutes,
a
which
long
we're
road.
noting from the last meeting. We'll do that. And that's us. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
There you go. Just a short.
I know.